A healthy plant. We have Dr. Thomas Dykstra, an expert on healthy and unhealthy plants. The industry, when a fungicide is needed, they think, well, that's just a natural thing. Or if a herbicide is needed, well, that's just part of the growing, because a weed is just a plant growing out of place. Or the plant feeding insects, well, it's like, they just happen. What's your take on all this? Are the fungal diseases, the weeds, and the plant-feeding insects the problem, or is just a problem showing the symptoms of a bigger problem? What's your take, Doc?
Well, the question is suggestive of the fact that we have a fungicide deficiency, and therefore we need to put down more fungicide, because if we had enough, we wouldn't have a problem. Therefore, in order to raise healthy crops, we need, and if we have a fungus infection, then we need to put down more fungicide. So no, that doesn't follow. However, this is certainly what we've been doing for a long time, and the same goes for insecticides and herbicides as well. So that doesn't change. Now, as far as a healthy plant is concerned, there are literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of ways physiologically we can test plants as to how healthy they are doing, whether they are doing what they are supposed to be doing, and all of that. So we can spend a lot of money and a lot of time looking at very many different aspects of plant physiology and plant health. Or we can try and simplify things. And if we simplify things, this is now going to open up some doors for us, because we would then be able, in order to determine whether or not we have a way to test a healthy plant. Now, a healthy plant is relatively easy to define. The reason why I say this is because all plants are designed to do one thing, and that is to photosynthesize. This is their job on Earth. They photosynthesize. Photosynthesis.
Pretend I'm in 8th grade. What is photosynthesis?
Sure. In that case, I need to put my arm on your shoulder right now and go, Glenny?
They've never done that. But a lot of times people talk about photosynthesis, but just in a short answer, what's the plant doing?
It is making sugar from the sun.
Making sugar from the sun.
Yeah, that's the short definition of it. There's a little bit more to it. It does involve CO2. A lot of CO2 will come in through the plant stomata, and this is the carbon source for the sugar. Oxygen and hydrogen are also important too. It's a very simple molecule. It's a C6H12O6, meaning there are 6 carbon atoms. There are 12 hydrogen atoms, and there are 6 oxygen atoms. So it's a very simple molecule. It is often a ring. Most of them are rings. And so that's sugar in a nutshell.
So the sugar a plant makes is the same sugar as what you get out of a bag?
Yes and no, because there are multiple types of sugar. There's glucose, fructose, sucrose. Because of that, most of the bag sugar that we get, table sugar, that's going to be sucrose, which is a disaccharide, meaning it's composed of 2 different monosaccharides. In this particular case, glucose and fructose. So that's table sugar. However, the sugar that we use, that almost all animals on life use predominantly, is going to be glucose. That's the main sugar that is used. That's the main C6H12O6 sugar that is used in order to make energy. And that is, it's converted into ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. 36 of them, because sugar is too powerful. Because sugar is too powerful, they need to break down all of that energy in sugar into 36 different units. Those 36 different units are then able to power the biochemistry inside the plant. So even though the end result is ATP, it begins with the sugar, and sugar is a good storage form of energy. And so that's the way plants are usually storing it. So this is what makes the world go round in some sense, because all of this sugar is being produced by the plants, which use it not only for themselves, but they also use it for our benefit if we eat them, or any ruminants that may be eating it as well. And it's also very useful for the microbes, because a considerable amount of that sugar, give or take about 40% of it, but it probably varies between 20 to 70% of it. About 40% of it is shunted down into the roots, and it's to feed the microbes in the soil, which then gives a return on the plants.
Whoa. So
am I going too fast for you, Glennie?
I can't hear that quick.
Yeah. I'll slow down.
So the leaves are gathering the sunlight.
They are.
And if they've got some carbon,
Yep.
some oxygen, and some hydrogen,
Yep.
they put it together.
So far, so good.
Make it in the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And then what, at night, does the sugar go down?
Mostly at night. It can go down at any part of the day. Predominantly, though, a lot of the sugar goes down at night. So any sugar that is produced during the day, a lot of it needs to be funneled down to feed the microbes. They're attracted to it. They get in close association with the roots. And this then gives the microbes the ability in order to feed the plant. The plant feeds the microbes, and then the microbes now feed the plant. But you've got a follow-up question because you've got that look on your face right now.
Thanks for noticing.
Sure.
Do you monitor or check the sugar content of a plant? Because if a plant's job is to make sugar, does it want to make a lot of it? Does it just need a little bit of it? And how do you know what that means?
Okay.
Hang on.
Yeah.
For the average person that has never heard about BRIX, B-R-I-X, the measurement of sugar, this goes back to the mid-1800s. Dr. BRIX was a scientist that invented this piece of equipment to measure the sugar content of grapes. Yes. And we have a wonderful display here. And the BRIX of grapes was used to determine the quality of the wine.
That's correct.
So it's an instrument that's been around for, 170 some years?
Long time.
And nobody talks about it.
It's actually talked about a lot in certain agricultural circles. And you mentioned wine, and there are a few others. Oranges too, it's very commonly used in oranges. As a matter of fact, this is how farmers are paid when they're making oranges. In Florida, they're juiced, and the amount of sugar, the BRIX levels in these oranges is measured on a regular basis as it's actively being juiced. Then they are paid, and they get more money on how high the BRIX levels are. So because of this, there are some industries that are very familiar with BRIX. However, and this is to answer your question in part, there are many industries that have never heard of BRIX. It's those individuals I probably should be addressing right now, because if you're not used to having one of these in your back pocket, which the wine industry will often have, especially as the grapes are getting near that point where they need to be picked, or if they want to check the oranges in Florida, California, or otherwise to see how well they're doing, then they're going to have these in their back pocket, and they might even have two on their person. However, when testing BRIX in other plants, it becomes a little bit different. And that is, we are looking and we suggest that the BRIX be measured in the leaf. This is different because the grape is the reproductive part. It's the fruit. The orange is the reproductive part. That's the fruit also. However, when you test BRIX levels in the leaf, the game changes at this point. And it changes, in my case, for the better.
Well, wait, you're not selling the leaves, are you? You're selling the fruit. Why would you? And I've been asked this question. Why would you check the leaf? Because we're selling the orange, we're selling the apple, we're selling the peach, the plum, the pear. Why do you check the leaf? That seems stupid.
Let me tell you. Do you see what I have to put up with? The reason why we check the leaf, that's twofold. One, because that's where all the sugar is made. So I want to know at point zero, where is the sugar being made? It's being made in the leaf. It may be transported to the root, the stem, the fruit. It may do all that at different times in different stages of the plant. However, the leaf, that solar panel, that's where it's being made. I want to know where the sugar is being made in the leaf. I want to be able to measure that leaf and get a good idea of how healthy the plant is. So the reason why we measure the fruit is a different reason, and that's because we're not usually looking at plant health. We're simply looking at the fruit because we're trying to sell it, make money, and support our families. In the case of the fruit, I'm an advocate of testing the fruit and the leaves. This is not an either-or proposition. Like, oh, I should only be testing my oranges and grapes, and I should not be testing the leaves. Those in viticulture should be testing the leaves. Many of them do because they're familiar with the refractometer and measuring it, and therefore they're looking at their leaves, because if you have too much of a disparity between the BRIX levels in your leaves and the BRIX levels in your grapes, you could lose the vine.
Disparity.
Disparity, difference.
Ah.
You're welcome.
Will the leaves be higher or lower than the fruit?
In most cases, the leaves are going to be lower.
Okay.
And that's because we're talking about sweet fruit. So if we're talking about sweet fruit, grapes, oranges, apples, things of that sort, they are always going to be higher. I'm always looking for at least 3 BRIX higher. However, not all fruit is going to be higher. So we've got various other parts of plants that we measure, like the avocado. The avocado is not a very sweet fruit, and so when we measure that, we have lower levels because there's not a lot in there, but we can still take a look at the avocado leaf. And so even though we're looking at grapes, we can still take a look at the grape leaf. Because we take a look at oranges, we can still take a look at the orange leaf. And so when you take a look at all of these leaves, you will notice, as I have over the past quarter of a century, that they have very consistent BRIX levels. That's not the case with a fruit. When a grape starts being produced, it's not that high. Same thing with an apple, same thing with an orange, since we're talking about those right now. And their BRIX levels will increase over time as sugar is pumped into these particular structures. So that's the way it's supposed to be. However, during that process, we can measure the leaves before reproduction. We can measure the leaves during reproduction. We can measure the leaves after reproduction. And that gives us an idea of how the sugar is being made, how much of it is being pumped to the various leaves. And in so doing, this gives us a really good idea of how healthy our plant is. So for example, we do know is that when you go into reproduction, there's always going to be a drop in BRIX. We know this. It's easily measurable. And we want to go into reproduction with the highest BRIX that we can. So if we go in with a 15 BRIX leaf, we're going to be in good shape, and our oranges are going to therefore also give a high BRIX, and I would be expecting them to be at least 18 BRIX. They can certainly, it's easy there, big guy, easy there.
I'd like to see those trees because they're not in Florida.
Oh, can I put you on the spot? I have eaten a 21 BRIX orange from Florida before. So I'm just doing this to show off. That's the only reason. That's the only reason I brought it up right now.
Did you grow it?
I did not. So therefore it's someone else.
I got prosecuted by several university professors when I was asking them the BRIX of the citrus, the orange leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying, well, Mr. South Dakota.
That would be you.
That'd be me. Says, we don't sell the leaves. We sell the oranges. We sell the fruit. And I said, I know you sell the fruit. And I said, what sugar content are you looking at to have the BRIX of the oranges? And it was a long hesitation. And there were several professors there. And I said, come on. I said, you guys know this. Well, the industry wants to be between 9, 10, 11, 12 if it's a good yield. It's like, wow. It's like, what do you want the leaves to be? Well, we haven't really determined that because we're selling the fruit, but we have to have 200 leaves per one piece of fruit.
Oh, does the size of the leaf make a difference then?
They didn't say that.
They didn't say.
Or the thickness.
Oh, the thickness of the leaf.
Or
because
the color.
Of course, the photosynthetic layer, the mesophyll layer would be thicker in a thicker leaf.
But you need 200 of them. I said, so what should the sugar content be?
In those 200 leaves?
Yes.
Got it. I'm following.
I didn't get an answer.
Didn't get an answer?
Now, there's a lot of naysayers on this. They say, oh, it's not that accurate. Or I've had people say, you know, I've had one of those stupid things in my drawer for 15 years.
It's a long time.
And I've never gotten it to move. Some people say, well, they'll squeeze some juice on there and it's hard to tell. Is it a 6? Is it a 7? Is it an 8? Said it isn't accurate enough. And there's too many variations. How would you talk to those people that are the naysayers saying, it's a bunch of hooey?
Bunch of hooey. I have measured lots and lots of crop plants raised by farmers, and 80% of the readings are between 2 and 10 BRIX. 80%. This does not mean that they can't get below 2. Doesn't mean that they can't get above 10. But 80% of the readings are between 2 and 10.
What does that mean? For anybody that's never looked at a chart,
Yeah.
2 to 10.
Yep.
Is that good?
You're usually going to find in a leaf, the BRIX almost never gets above 20. Almost never. And that's the reason. The reason why this happens is because the leaf, once it gets too much sugar, will start moving it to different parts of the plant. So that's why it usually stops at about 20. Therefore, you're not getting 30, 35 BRIX. This does not happen. You can reach 30 BRIX on certain parts of the plant. I'm thinking, sugarcane along the stem and some other things, but you don't find that in the leaf itself. It produces as much sugar as it can, feeds the rest of the plant, and then feeds the microbes in the soil and makes sure that the levels are below 20. So therefore, anything between 1 to 20 is going to be a relatively normal BRIX reading. Actually, I've gotten below 1 BRIX before on many leaves, so I should probably correct myself on that since I'm being recorded. But we have these 1 to 20 readings right now. So when I'm getting between 2 to 10, that just means I'm in the bottom half. That's all that means.
Okay, so let's say from 2 to 10, let's say we have an average of, let's say 6 BRIX.
6 BRIX.
When you look at a plant at 6 BRIX, is that a healthy plant?
That is not a healthy plant at 6 BRIX. The plant doesn't become truly healthy until 14 BRIX. Okay. At that point, it becomes objectively healthy. Anything below that is going to be questionable. Now, the 12 BRIX reading, if you do your research and you get on the internet, you'll find lots of talk about the 12 BRIX reading, and that is anything above 12 BRIX is healthy, anything underneath 12 BRIX is not, and therefore is attacked by insects, attacked by disease. That is mostly true, mostly true. I have found that insects will take a bite out of 12 BRIX plants. They will not stay long, but they can do it, and they will do it. And so the 12 BRIX is, shall we say, good enough. If you are dealing with a 2 to 10 BRIX in your crops, and then suddenly things turn around and you're up to 12 BRIX, you're going to be fine. But as far as objectively healthy, you're not objectively healthy until you hit 14. And part of the reason, too, I mentioned that, is because there are going to be fluctuations. These fluctuations that you mentioned on the refractometer are relatively common during the course of a day. And a healthy plant is going to have a variability of about 2 BRIX. An unhealthy plant will vary much more than 2 BRIX. So if I'm going to get variability of 2 BRIX, I think you can do the math right now, is that you're shooting for 14 BRIX, so that in the course of the day or the week, that if it goes down to 12 BRIX, you don't have that much to worry about. Yes, some insects will come along and take a bite out of your plant. That's something that we just have to deal with because insects need to eat, we need to eat. So I get that part of it. But if you're shooting for 14 BRIX, then nothing is going to be eating it at that point, and you're not going to have any disease attacking it because it is now objectively healthy. I don't want to mention just healthy. I want to mention objectively healthy, because whatever parameter we test, we're going to be able to find a healthful component to it. And all of these healthful components, with all these 100 to 1,000 different ways to test a plant, will all be supportive of BRIX. So everything can be reduced to BRIX. Does BRIX tell you everything you need to know? No, it does not. But is it the first step that needs to be taken? Absolutely, it does. It's the first step.
The first step?
The first step is to see the health of your plant
so
from
if
the
you're not
get-go.
checking BRIX, you don't know anything about the plant.
That is correct. You don't know enough about the plant in order to say anything with authority.
Okay, do you check a bottom leaf, a top leaf, a middle leaf, a center leaf? No matter what the plant is, where do you check?
You can test anything you want. So if you want to test the bottom leaf, you can test the bottom leaf. I've tested those. You want to test the top leaf? You can do that too. If you want to test the middle leaf, go right ahead. And if you want to test the fruit, you want to test the stem, you want to test the root, you can test any part of it. I've tested all of them. We know that the leaf BRIX is going to give the consistent readings. This is going to be mostly reflective of the health level because we do get some larger fluctuations, for example, in the roots, some very large fluctuations in the roots, but we don't find them in the leaves. So because of that, yes, it is the first step. Then once we have a BRIX reading and we know how healthy the plant is, then we can move to a soil analysis. Then we can move to a tissue analysis. Then we can move to a plant sap analysis. Then we can move to any one of a number of other tests, which usually give us more information. In other words, they start to fill in some of the gaps as to help us to understand why I got a 6.8 reading. Because I'm thinking, wow, that doesn't sound that high. Dr. Dykstra said it should be higher, and it should. But as far as the details are concerned, you will need to spend a little bit more money. Having mentioned money right now, I should tell you that doing this test is free. So once you bought your refractometer, it's free. It's not going to cost you any more money. You can go out there. If you think the BRIX refractometer is the coolest device in the world, there is absolutely nothing preventing you financially from doing 15 to 20 tests a day. Because you can, and if you want to, you're welcome to do that. I have done that many during a day. It's usually because I'm being asked in order to do a reading or multiple readings from a field or to do a comparative analysis. And then, yes, I will be doing as many readings as I can. But generally speaking, the farmer doesn't do that. The farmer is looking to get something at, I think a good figure is a minimum of twice a week. If you're doing it twice a week, you're going to be in good shape. If you're doing it once a week, it's a little bit problematic when you have a short-lived plant. So if you're dealing with citrus, avocado, apples, not a big deal because they're going to be around for decades. However, if you're dealing with shorter-lived plants, 50, 60, 70-day, 80-day, 90-day plants, you kind of need to be out there a little bit more often. And in that case, I would say twice a week would be a good thing to see. What does the corn plant look like when it's first coming up? What do the cotyledons look like when they're first coming up? What does the plant look like at this stage, at this stage, at this stage? What happens just before reproduction? What happens after the ear starts to form? How does the BRIX change? All of this can be looked at, and this will give you a fantastic idea of how healthy your plant is. If you needed to know what needs to be done in order to make it better, there are plenty of tests out there, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers know all about those tests.
When you talk about leaf sugar versus fruit sugar, this just happened the last 2 years in California and a lot of the wine industry. They will do what many growers talk about, evacuating the sugar from the leaf and from the cane, because they said, we're going to trim that off anyway. We want to suck everything out of there to go to the fruit. Why would we leave all that nutrition in there just to prune it off and then hopefully recycle it? For several years, I've been telling these guys, you are on a tightrope, because the day will come when there isn't going to be enough reserve sugar in that leaf to fulfill the requirements that the wine industry or the juice industry wants. It happened last year, it's happening this year, and they're saying, oh my gosh, we needed to get to, depending on the variety of grape, 18, 20, 22, or 24 BRIX. The grape industry understands BRIX very thoroughly. so they said, we're 2 bricks short of getting the market. And so many growers will say, well, we never get paid on premium. No, but you doggone sure get docked when you don't have it. So what happened, these guys ran up to 20 bricks. They wanted 22 bricks. And I said, okay, you ran out of sugar. It's like, so your grapes didn't sugar up. Your leaves are dehydrated, dry, and done. Mm-hmm. What were you short of in the leaf that didn't finish the sugar content in the grape? And I said, if you overthink this for more than a second, you're not realizing how simple this is.
Wait a second, hold it. You're saying there's a connection between the leaf, the grape leaf, and the actual grape itself?
Call me crazy.
Whoa. This is...
So with this, so the answer is the leaf has to make the sugar, which you very well defined and very well described. And the solar panel, the leaf, has to make the sugar and then transfer it to the grape. But when it's all dried up, dehydrated,
it's not photosynthesizing.
Bingo. Have you noticed with the refractometer a lot of the fungal diseases on many different plants? And this doesn't matter whatever plants you've got, but if you're looking at Phytophthora, Rhizoctonia, Pythium, Verticillium wilt, white mold, powdery mildew, I mean, they're all part of the same scumbag family. What we have seen is if the plant is under 8 or 9 bricks of sugar, those diseases run rampant. Have you noticed anything like that in your travels and studies?
We notice that all the time. The diseases are very rampant once you get below, as a matter of fact, I have not seen disease take hold of a plant below 10. So 9...
Whoa. Say that again.
I have not...
Look into the camera. Growers need to hear this. There you go. Look sincere.
How's it going? I have not seen disease take hold of a plant that is at 10 bricks. When I see plants at 9 bricks, there is almost complete protection. I would say it's got to be pushing 95%. Once you get below 6 bricks, diseases run very, very rampant. And at that point, you would say that there seems to be a change in the plant as to why. And it's not just low bricks that's doing it. The actual change is much more physiological, and it has to deal with a new terminology, which are the secondary plant metabolites. The secondary plant metabolites offer protection for the plant. They are often deterrents for insects. They give taste, they give flavor, they give color to a plant, and you don't get secondary plant metabolites to any degree below 6 bricks. This is why we see so many diseases taking hold of a plant below 6 bricks. This does not mean that once you hit 7 bricks, all's good. It just means that some diseases are going to have a difficult time of it. When we are at 10 bricks, there is really too much sugar and there's too much health and too many secondary plant metabolites in the plant in order for disease to take hold. So therefore, we don't see disease below that. But when we're at 9, there's a little bit of susceptibility. I don't see much of it though, but I'm a little curious that 9 is a little bit problematic. But by the time you get down below that in the 8, 7, 6, things are getting dicey at that point. And one of the big cliffs that you essentially go off is 6. Because when you get down to 6, the plant is not strong enough in order to fight off disease. And because of that, it is highly susceptible. It is susceptible to insects, it's susceptible to disease, and it doesn't have the energy to produce secondary plant metabolites. It takes too much energy to produce them. When you are in a vegetative state, if you are a plant, and you're not, but if you were a plant, you would be in a vegetative state and you'd be increasing the roots, stem, and the leaves as much as possible in order to make the plant as big as possible, because you want as many solar panels on the plant as possible going into reproduction. This is how plants work. And so when we have low bricks plants, they can't take care of themselves, and that's where this number of 6 bricks comes about, because they're so weak they can't really do much of anything. They don't taste good. They don't look good. They're being attacked by insects. They're being attacked by fungus. And so 6 is a big, big problem. Once you get below 6, there's really nothing that you can do at this point. I mean, I've seen just terrible plants that are coming in at 4 BRIX and below. It seems like there's really not much that can be done because they look truly awful. Whether or not they're being attacked, I might not even be able to see it. They might be attacked by insects in the roots. You could have Diabrotica, which are the rootworms attacking corn. I don't know. I can't see that. But you can tell on what is above the soil as to whether that plant is doing well. So we verify it with the refractometer and we say, aha, it's coming in at 3.8 BRIX right now. This isn't good.
To be clear.
You want me to be more clear?
No. The short answer for the growers. So if I have verticillium wilt in some veggies.
That's a really big word.
Thank you. I just read it this morning and remembered it.
Did you?
But if we have experienced verticillium wilt and we take the steps to get our BRIX above 10, what is the chance that we can skip the fungicide applications?
At that point, it would be a 100% chance that you can skip the fungicide.
So with verticillium wilt, 10 BRIX or more, and that's exactly what we've seen, that the fungicide isn't needed.
That's correct. That would be a waste of money.
Okay.
I'm using smaller words than you right now.
Okay, I'm coming right with another big one. Phytophthora.
Whew, that is a big word.
Rhizoctonia.
Ouch. Keep going.
Pythium.
I like that.
That's all I got.
That's all you got.
The powdery white. All of the fungal diseases, all of the mold diseases, all of the bottom algae diseases, they are all living in what kind of an environment? What do they enjoy to live in?
A low BRIX environment? Is that where you want me to go? I'm trying to see where you're leading me right now.
This is information to help growers get rid of the chemical.
Right.
Because in my mind, regenerative isn't trying to regenerate the chemicals in the soil.
Well said.
They're there to solve a problem and stop a problem. But once you understand what causes the problem, you can engineer the environment, engineer the area to grow quality health food.
Right.
So the take home would be minimum 10 BRIX of sugar on the plant, checking leaf, checking stem. On alfalfa or corn, I check leaf and stem because if you're feeding it to the livestock, you feed all of it.
Wow, you test both of them. Rebel.
Above and beyond. And what we're finding is the leaf many times is a little bit higher sugar content than the leaf and or the stem. But above 10 BRIX to take home, correct me if I'm wrong, above 10 BRIX you have fungal, algae, and mold resistance no matter what.
No matter what the plant is. Yeah.
And above 14 BRIX, you have
complete protection against insects.
What about any particular aphids, leafhoppers?
Yes.
Whiteflies?
Yep. Those are in different categories, and we should probably, I think we should do another video on that. We should move into the insects and do another video on that. That's what I'm thinking.
We can get more particular with another video.
That would be cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Without asking another question,
because I know we're hitting 20 minutes right now. So as soon as you went off on the tangent, I'm thinking like he's thinking we're past 20 minutes right now, so we need to stop. So I'm trying to reel you in and to start another presentation because when you're going to insects and BRIX, holy smokes, there's another 20 minutes right there.
Above 10 BRIX is many of your disease resistance, and above 14 is natural insecticidal resistance. If you want to understand more about the insects, that will be in an upcoming video. If you'd like to learn more about what Dr. Dykstra does, what he stands for, and what his work has been, you can find him at
dykstralabs.com, or you can type in Dykstra Labs in YouTube and take a view of some of the videos that I put out.
Okay. We hope this information has been useful and beneficial. For Thomas Dykstra and myself, Glenn, we at SoilWorks appreciate you watching. Thank you.